It's very risky to push up.
Play on the Turtle, hooks him as well. Disintegration Ray is going to burn down Turtle. Dashan now with a flank and a look to toned up high, and it's just a massacre in the mid lane.
Hello everyone, Mono here. Today I present my third Velkoz competitive play analysis video. In this video series, I take a look at Velkoz mid being played in competitive matches, and showcase how the pros are playing the Eye of the Void. I started this series at the end of 2015, and wasn't able to cover the games while I was finishing up college. Since then, Velkoz has been picked a few times. We saw Velkoz picked as a counterpick against Cassiopeia by Cloud9 Jensen and CLG Huhi during the 2016 NA LCS playoffs. And Velkoz was also picked versus an Orianna 2 times by Maple when the Flash Wolves squared up against the Unicorns of Love at IEM Oakland in December. Since 2016, we've yet to see Velkoz emerge in the mid lane, but after a 7-month drought, Velkoz was picked not once, but twice by CounterLogic Gaming's mid laner Huhi against FlyQuest in the NALCS this past weekend. Huhi excels at playing mages like Ahri, LeBlanc, and Orianna, and even has Aurelion Sol banned against him nearly every match. But he's one of the few mid laners to have ever picked Velkoz. He picked Velkoz in Game 4 of the NALCS 3rd place match last September, and had a game-winning double kill to send CLG into Game 5 against Immortals, in which they eventually won. For this video, we'll briefly go over the 2 drafts, the Velkoz vs Corki matchup, look at Huhi's pre-game setup and build, and then take a look at his laning and his team fighting. To start, let's briefly look at the draft. In Game 1, CLG first picked the Gragas as a flex pick, and then grabbed Tristana and Gnar once FlyQuest drafted Kalista and Kha'Zix. The Rumble pick gave top lane a good lane matchup for balls, and FlyQuest grabbed it so it doesn't get banned. After Lucian, Syndra, and Galio bans come through, FlyQuest wants to hide their support ban for the last pick and give a comfort mid lane pick for High, so he grabs Corki, a pick he's been fairly comfortable on. In response, CLG picked the Morgana and the Velkoz, mostly because of 2 main reasons in my opinion. One is CLG know the mid lane matchup, and it's apparent that they've prepared the Velkoz pick as a decent matchup into Corki. The Velkoz vs Corki matchup isn't really favored heavily towards one of the champions, but Velkoz only struggles during the early game versus Corki's wave clear. Once Velkoz gets a lost chapter and puts points into his W, he can easily match Corki's wave clear. Velkoz is also a good pick here because he has a very strong mid game. Corki hits his power spike once he has Triforce and maybe an IE or Static Shiv he becomes stronger, but Velkoz pumps out so much damage after 6 and a Morello Namicon that Velkoz actually has good kill pressure onto Corki. Primarily, the kill pressure comes from Vel's ultimate and his Q, both abilities being able to outrange Corki even if he uses his Valkyrie. 1 Q, and Velkoz has potential to combo his abilities to prevent the Corki from being able to influence the game. The second reason is that CLG knows Morgana is one of Lemon Nation's go-to support picks, and by using the Black Shield to peel for his carries, he prevents the engaged CC options that FlyQuest have so far, which is just Kalista's Fate's Call. They also might have been expecting a Thresh pick in this situation, so that could have been also a possibility. With little CC options to lock down Velkoz, it forces FlyQuest to pick a support with CC and engage tools, so they pick Sona. The second game is sort of the same story. CLG wait for FlyQuest to pick Corki mid, have some defensive peel options for the Velkoz, and only have 1 or 2 mildly threatening CC options for Velkoz to worry about in teamfights. Velkoz is usually a risky blind pick, which is why Velkoz has always been picked once the opposing mid lane matchup is known. Let's move on to Huhi's setup, which showcases some different choices on Velkoz than previously seen before. Huhi takes a very standard rune page with 3 move speed quints and 10% CDR per level and 3 MR blues. This is a pretty standard rune page setup on Velkoz, and a lot of high elo Velkoz mains have been running this page against low kill pressure mid lane matchups for a while. For masteries, Huhi goes for Thunderlord's Decree, but interestingly he strays away from taking Precision, which gives magic penetration per level, and he actually takes Intelligence, which is 5% CDR. This is pretty unusual since Velkoz usually relies on building Magic Pen to finish off enemies with his Organic Deconstructive passive stacks, but the Mastery path makes sense based on what he ends up building. That build is to rush Sork Boots and then immediately rush double CDR items, followed up with double Magic Pen items. The idea of this build is to farm up slowly for Lost Chapter, rush Sork Boots for more kill pressure and roaming for skirmishes, and then finish Morello and then Banshee's Veil. By the time mid-game comes around, Velkoz has 45% CDR, some magic resist, and a lot of damage. He then makes up for the lack of magic pen from his masteries by building 2 penetration items, those being Leandry's and Void Staff. If you're up against a heavy AD comp or an assassin mid laner, going Zhonya's second instead of Banshees is the better option. Initially, I was slightly skeptical of the build because it seems to lack the extra power that Morello, Lunens, and Liandry has, but upon trying it out in solo queue, the 45% CDR feels really good. Plus, the Banshee's Veil makes it that much harder for Velkoz to be locked down in fights, forcing the enemy to break the spell shield before they can fully engage. I imagine Huhi opted for this build path for the extra safety in fights and the instant 45% CDR for wave clear. And wave clear is significantly more valued aspect in competitive play for various reasons, and you can argue that Banshees is a more appropriate pick versus Corki due to the item being able to cancel out a missile or two. With Ludens, Huhi only gains a small amount of AP and movement speed that he already has, and he doesn't gain that spell shield or the CDR. Now let's move on to the laning phase, and I'm going to merge both games into one because Huhi played the same matchup against Hai very similarly, and both games he performed very well. First thing to know about this matchup is that Corki can control this lane for the first 6 levels because he has the better wave clear. Corki can shove in the wave to turret and make it harder for Velkoz to last hit since Vel's W is rather weak until it has 3 or 4 points invested into the ability, and Huhi didn't take any AP runes to make up for that fact. This is a natural aspect of the matchup, and Huhi does a really good job of timing his abilities to stay even with farm with Hai. In both games, mid lane was targeted rather early by both junglers and supports, so we'll go over the steps CLG took to gain control of the map by targeting the mid lane. In game 1, the replay cuts out when Darduck's Gragas forces Hai's flash at around 5:45 in the game, which Huhi responds with using his ultimate onto the Corki, but Lemon can easily negate the damage with his healing on Sona. Now, if you've ever played a solo laner that requires any form of mana sustain, you know that usually around the level 6 mark, that if you haven't backed yet, you most likely are very low on mana. In this scenario here, Huhi was extremely low on mana and only had enough to use his ulti. If he had more, he might have been able to kill the Corki. More importantly though, if he had gotten a good opportunity to base, he would have had a lost chapter to give him the spell rotation, but the Corki matchup doesn't allow Huhi to back or any good chances to do so. But Darduck successfully blew Hai's flash and gave Huhi a good window to pressure Hai. In game 2, we didn't see Omar God gank mid early, but we saw Afro move's Thresh roam up to mid. Stixxay and Afro got an early first blood and then carefully pathed around Vision to land a nice hook to expend Corki's heal. Darshan also roams down from coming back from the base and manages to blow Corki's flash. With no summoners, Huhi sets up vision control on the bottom side of the lane, resulting in a very well coordinated kill onto Corki. Immediately after, Afro finds another pick onto the Kog'Maw and giving Velkoz and Olaf a nice boost in gold. What made these plays work in both games was the control that mid had during that game. Game 2 is the perfect example of this. We can see that Afro clearly pathed away from the river so he wouldn't get spotted by Vision. Since he had the gold lead over the bot lane, and FlyQuest's bot lane likely wouldn't follow that roam, he knew that to make the gank work, he just had to avoid getting spotted. Once Hai had no heal and Darshan blew the flash, CLG again set up Vision towards their strong side, which resulted in Hai's death. Now that CLG had control over FlyQuest's bot side jungle, it's hard for FlyQuest to respond with no vision control or a bot lane that's behind. However, all of this macro game stuff is not exclusive to Velkoz, so let's see how Huhi performed post level 6. In game 1, Huhi executed a fantastic play when Moon's Kha'Zix goes in for a gank. Huhi immediately responds to this gank, but took advantage of Moon taking a turret shot and was able to kill him thanks to Darduck showing up on time. A key element of playing Velkoz is the long range of his abilities, so even if Huhi had to use flash, he quickly was able to turn things around. But let's take a closer look at this here. Look at the abilities that Huhi actually landed. He lands the first proc of his W, which doesn't do a whole lot, Moon tanks a turret shot, and then the rest of the damage is just the disintegration rate. That's it. Velkoz does not need to proc 2 or 3 passive stacks to proc the full passive. He can just hit them with 1 stack and go for the kill on the squishy target. In fact, Huhi's very aware of this. Most of the time when he ults, he pulls the trigger after 1 passive stack is actually accumulated. Even if it doesn't kill the enemy in lane, it still is able to relieve pressure and force the opponent into a bad spot. Now, for teamfighting, I'm not going to break down too much or each fight one by one, but I want you to take note of how Velkoz is using his abilities here, especially his Velkoz Q. In game 2, one of the best way Velkoz pushes for an objective was by using his ult to force the other team to back off of the turret or the inhibitor or whatever, because they were too low. Take note that Huhi does this even when there isn't a clear opportunity, but just to force the enemy to back or risk getting dove with a man disadvantage. One of the most critical aspects of Velkoz is his ability to kite, which means attacking the opponent while moving backwards. For Velkoz, that means you need to be able to land your Q most of the time, but it still applies to his other abilities. In order to kite effectively, you also need to position properly. So, I'm going to close this video out. I'm just going to show you the good teamfights that Huhi is involved with. Take note of his positioning and how he is using his abilities to make space for his own safety and his team's safety, and as well as to allow his front line to catch up and stick onto their target. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like and a sub. That would be greatly appreciated. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your continuing support, and have a great day, guys.
I'm just trying to get to that break point where they feel like they can win a team fight.
Yeah, Tristana getting... Oh!
Oh, Danik with the play, does knock Kai back in. He's going to get rooted by Morgana and blown up by the Velkoz stick save. Just enough damage. He's going to leap out with the flash on from Lemon's going to barely miss. While Turtle, though, into the mix on the fight, going to try and take down Danik as the first. He's low, but he's not down as the ulti. Back down almost torches Moon.
Oh, Balls is still teleported into enemy territory. Now he's toast.
Dies to Darshan, who also TP'd in CLG. Took a lot of Baron damage, but could still be problematic.
The Velkoz ult could just destroy them here. They have to be careful.
Yeah, Huhi lining up the perfect.
Oh my God!
Turtle gets picked up by a Q. Gonna commit to the Baron. They have to take it down. The smite is there for movement. Stixay leaps in the pit to try and take him down. Moon goes in mid, gonna try and outplay, but he goes down as that's Lemon going down as well. CLG gonna wipe out almost all of FlyQuest.
For the enemies to kind of get back there to him. Here we go, though. They're gonna try.
Moon looking for it, but spotted out there. Is Afro now gonna pop coin?
Oh, Lemon wants it.
Lemon flush ult. He actually finds Stixay, but he buffers to jump out. Damage still there, but Callista's going to peel off Darshan, who's looking forward. Huhi blows up the Sona, but Wild Turtle still doing a decent amount of damage. Danik with a massive play. The Nard's going to move it in. Huhi grabs an instant triple kill out of the play. And that's just
Baron.
Well, have to try something, but CLG already with the easy response. Ball's going to go mega, but Kite out of the way. Knocks one back. It's only Darshan as the tank moves back towards Wild Turtle, but Ball's going to stay tanky for a little while longer. Huhi going to try and burn down Moon. He goes down. Turtle going to be the next target. That's going to be effectively the Aces Lemon Nation. CLG is going to look for this siege, take down this turret. They've got another inhib to try and take if they need it in the bottom side of the map. And FlyQuest will offer a pitiful defense as Omar rushes in and slows down Lemon and High. Afro again with a big play, plays High back, going to try and take out carry number one. He goes down as Turtle is trying in vain to get Darshan out of the back lane. He does get stunned by the Braum, but Lantern taken out will keep him safe, and Huhi going to zone the rest of them out as inhib number one's going to fall in the mid lane.
All right, 5 versus 3. Elder Dragon buff on, and CLG this time around.
Yep.
Look at a finish.
Only one turret left there. A speedy finish attempt to get it. That's another great hook from Afro. It's going to seal Wild Turtle's fate. Balls goes down. Only one left there. It's Lemon once. No, never mind. He's absolutely dead. And CLG going to knock down the next turret. Ace FlyQuest and complete the sweep 2-0 to start their next week. Who needs Rift Rivals, Kobe? Not CLG.